Hi, folks. So this is part of the module called job orientation. Meet the people you'll be working with. And so now I'm just talking about me. So I am your instructor, and I'm Heidi Shaw. And you can call me one of two things. You can either call me Heidi or Dr. Shaw. Please don't call me anything else. So please don't call me Miss Heidi or Ms. Heidi, and don't call me Ms., Miss, Mrs., or anything. So my given name is Heidi, and in academic environments, it's appropriate and respectful to use a person's academic title, which for me is doctor because I have a PhD. Um, but again, you can call me Heidi or Dr. Shaw, and also don't call me Dr. Heidi. That's not okay either. So Heidi, Dr. Shaw, either of those is fine. So I wanted to give you just a little bit of background about me and kind of where I came from. So as a kid, I always had many interests. I loved music. I learned to play the guitar, the clarinet, recorder, fife. I loved learning languages and studied German, Russian, Latin, and American Sign Language. Um, I spent some time in Germany as an exchange student in high school, and I loved animals. And I decided in third grade that I would become a zookeeper. Of course, I knew nothing about zoos. Uh, and when I was about 6 years old, I saw an episode of a little blurb that was on Saturday cartoons called In the News about a chimpanzee who used a computer to communicate with humans. And for me, it was like discovering that Dr. Dolittle, who is a fictional character that I loved, was real. And I was enamored by the idea of talking with animals. And this stuck with me into high school. And I started researching the idea. And I found some research projects that studied language use in animals. And I found a particular one that actually used signs of American Sign Language, which is a real human language, with a chimpanzee Washom. So rather than using the computer and a contrived language, they used a real language. So I decided that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to study chimpanzees and sign language. And so to prepare for that, I enrolled in a night class for American Sign Language at our local community college. And I grew up in Massachusetts, so it was Northern Essex Community College. And meanwhile, so I was in high school I was wanting to go to college. So I looked everywhere in New England, where I lived, to find a program that studied chimps and sign language and found nothing. And so finally, long story short, I found out that there was one program in the United States, and it was at the University of Oklahoma in Norman, Oklahoma. And so I tracked down the address of Roger Fouts, who was the researcher working with Washoe at the time. And I wrote him asking how I could get involved in that research. And he wrote me back saying that because of the nature of chimpanzees, that they live a long time, he preferred to get freshmen involved in research. And so students would be around for a longer period of time. So between when I wrote to him and the time I applied for college, Roger Fouts, Washoe, and some other chimpanzees, and the research project had moved to Central Washington University in Ellensburg. So I was kind of naive and bold at the same time. And without contacting him further, I applied to Central. I was accepted. And when I was 18 years old, I traveled by Greyhound bus by myself through 11 states over 3.5 days to this small rural school in Ellensburg without confirming my position in the research lab. And I'm still not sure if I was just self-confident or naive, but it all worked out, and that began my adventure of talking with chimpanzees. Um, in terms of actual expertise, both of my parents were in education, and as a child, I vowed that I would never go into teaching. And yet, I have spent my entire life teaching in some capacity. And as a child, I volunteered with Easter Seals to teach swimming to kids with disabilities. As an undergraduate, I tutored students in German. I trained new research assistants at the research lab working with chimpanzees. I served as a teaching assistant for statistics. As a graduate student, I continued training new research assistants, and I assisted in statistics, animal behavior, animal communication, and learning theory courses. And I began teaching senior citizens about the chimp research. Um, I taught fellow scientists about the same research. I taught child development courses to other graduate students. And while I had completely um, planned to make a career out of research, it turns out that everything that I did was preparing me to go into education. And so I applied and got this teaching position at YVC back in 1995. So my formal education is a bit diverse. It includes undergraduate degrees in ethology, which is the scientific study of animal behavior. I also have an undergraduate degree in German, and I have a master's and doctoral degrees in research psychology. And my major professors were rigorous scientists. And so rigorous experimental design, animal communication, and pre-linguistic communication in human infants were central topics in my graduate work. My master's thesis and my doctoral thesis investigated different aspects of the use of American Sign Language in these cross-fostered chimpanzees. So this one's going to be a little bit longer because I'm just going to keep talking a little bit more. So at YVC, I typically teach introductory psychology and lifespan development. I've also taught many learning communities with faculty in the biology and English departments. I enjoy team teaching special topics such as the Salem witch trials. And in addition to teaching, I continue to conduct research and present findings at conferences. And my research builds on past research conducted by my major professors, Doctors Allen and Trixie Gardner. And they were interested in the continuities between animal and human intelligence. And so they raised young chimpanzees as human children and investigated the effects of these, what they call cross-fostering conditions on development. And they were also interested in the relationship between social and intellectual development and how that gets expressed in language and other forms of communication. So a few years ago, students assisted me in studying various aspects of pointing gestures. And students and I presented that research at regional and international conferences. And the coding system that we developed for describing the adult human pointing and the method for transcribing gaze direction will get used in further studies of both infant and adult chimpanzees and infant and adult humans. So Alan Gardner died this past fall. I guess it's been a year ago fall. And I continued to work with him when he died. And the work that I do that had been in collaboration with him was using his early data of the cross-fostered chimpanzees. And YVC students have been actively assisting me in this research as well. And so if that's something that you are interested in, please come talk to me. Okay. I think I'm going to stop there and then I'll shift gears in the next one and talk about my role as your instructor rather than my outside the classroom work. So I will stop right here and I will see you on the flip side.